The shadows in the marble halls of Elver's royal palace grew longer as twilight descended, stretching like grasping fingers across the ornate floor mosaics. In a private council chamber, hidden behind heavy oak doors reinforced with bands of silvered steel, were figures huddled around a table of polished obsidian. The dancing flames of wall-mounted torches cast their faces in alternating light and shadow, making their expressions seem to shift between benign and malevolent with each flicker. Lord Darius Blackthorn, his silver-streaked black hair immaculate despite the late hour, traced a finger along the rim of his wine goblet. The prince's latest speech in the marketplace caused quite a stir. Did you see how the common folk hung on his every word? Indeed, Lady Mariella Frost replied, her voice as sharp as winter wind. His talk of peace with the barbarian kingdoms and equal rights for the lower classes grows more dangerous by the day. The masses actually believe he can deliver on these idealistic fantasies. The youngest of the group, Lord Cedric Vale, leaned forward, his boyish features belying the calculation in his gray eyes. The prince's idealism threatens to unravel centuries of tradition. He must be silenced, one way or another. But he is beloved by the people, the fourth figure spoke, emerging from the shadows. Commander Marcus Ironhand's weathered face bore the scars of countless battles. How do we move against him without inciting revolt? A thin smile curved across Lord Blackthorn's lips. Leave that to us. With the right evidence, the council will have no choice but to act. The people's love can turn to hate as quickly as summer storms, with the proper motivation. Lady Frost's fingers drummed against the table's surface. What do you propose? I have agents who can plant documents suggesting the prince has been corresponding with our enemies. A few forged letters, a compromised servant's testimony. Blackthorn's smile widened. The council's paranoia will do the rest. And if he fights back? Commander Ironhand asked. The prince is no mere courtier. He's trained with the blade since childhood. Then we'll ensure the evidence is so damning that fighting back will only confirm his guilt, Lord Vale replied. Sometimes the most effective chains are the ones we forge ourselves. Lady Frost raised her goblet. To tradition, then. And to ensuring it remains unbroken. The conspirators' glasses clinked together in the flickering torchlight, the sound echoing like a death knell through the chamber. None of them noticed the shadow that detached itself from behind a heavy curtain, sliding away into the darkness with the silence of a ghost. Prince Sylvar Rosser stood at the window of his private study, watching the sun rise over Elver's gleaming spires. At 25, he cut an impressive figure, tall and athletic, with silver-gilt hair that caught the morning light and eyes the color of storm clouds. The ancestral sword of House Rosser hung at his hip, its jeweled pommel glinting. A knock at the door interrupted his contemplation. Enter, he called, turning to face his visitor. Elena Rivers slipped into the room, her dark hair disheveled and her face pale with worry. As Sylvar's childhood friend and most trusted agent within the palace, she had been his eyes and ears in places a prince could not go. My prince, she said, closing the door quietly behind her. I have grave news. Sylvar's expression tightened. Speak freely, Elena. What have you learned? The council, there was a meeting last night. Lords Blackthorn and Vale, Lady Frost, and Commander Ironhand. They plan to move against you. Elena's hands twisted together. They're going to forge evidence of treason. A muscle worked in Sylvar's jaw. So they've finally decided to act. I knew my proposals for peace would not go unchallenged, but I had hoped. He shook his head. No matter. We'll face this threat as we have faced others. This is different, Elena insisted. They're not just targeting you, they're going to make it look like you've betrayed everything Elver stands for. The people's love will turn to hatred. Sylvar paced to his desk, running his fingers over a stack of diplomatic correspondence. The people know my heart. They've heard me speak of my vision for a better future, one where our children don't grow up knowing only endless war. The people are fickle, Elena cut in. And Lord Blackthorn knows exactly how to manipulate their fears. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You need to leave, Sylvar. Tonight, before they can spring their trap. He whirled to face her. Run? Like a coward? Everything I've worked for is here, the alliances I've built, the reforms I've proposed. You can't reform anything if you're dead. Elena's eyes filled with tears. And that's what this will lead to. They'll either execute you for treason or arrange an accident once you've been discredited. Sylvar's hand fell to his sword hilt, fingers tightening around the familiar grip. I could expose their plot. Go before the full council. With what proof? My word against 4 of the most powerful nobles in the realm? Elena shook her head. They've planned this too carefully. You need to survive, Sylvar. Live to fight another day. A heavy silence fell between them. Finally, Sylvar spoke, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. You're right, of course. You usually are. He managed a wan smile. I suppose this is what comes of trying to change a system that's stood for centuries. It's what comes of being a good man in a corrupt world, Elena corrected. She reached into her cloak and withdrew a sealed packet. I've prepared everything you'll need, maps, letters of passage, enough gold to get you safely beyond the border. There's a merchant caravan leaving for the eastern territories at midnight. If you ride hard, you can catch them before they cross the mountains. Sylvar took the packet, his fingers brushing against hers. You've thought of everything. As usual. Someone has to look after you, she replied with a tremulous smile. You're too busy trying to save everyone else. A commotion in the hallway outside drew their attention. Heavy bootfalls approached, accompanied by the clinking of armor. They're early, Elena whispered, face draining of color. Quick, the servants' passage. The door burst open before either could move. Commander Ironhand strode in, flanked by palace guards with drawn swords. His face was grave beneath his steel helmet. Prince Sylvar Rosser, he intoned formally. By order of the Royal Council, you are under arrest for high treason against the crown and people of Elver. Sylvar raised his chin, meeting Commander Ironhand's gaze steadily. On what evidence? A thin smile crossed the commander's withered face as he produced a leather document case. These letters, Your Highness. Correspondence with the barbarian King Hrothgar, offering to open our eastern defenses in exchange for support in, how shall we put it, restructuring our government. Those are forgeries, Elena burst out. My prince would never. Silence. Ironhand's voice cracked like a whip. Lady Rivers, your presence here at this hour is interesting. Perhaps you'd care to explain to the council your own role in this conspiracy? Sylvar stepped forward, placing himself between Elena and the guards. Leave her out of this. She knows nothing. His storm-gray eyes locked with Elena's. Isn't that right, Lady Rivers? You are simply delivering a morning report, as is your duty? Elena's hands trembled, but she caught his meaning. Yes. Just routine matters. Then you are dismissed, Ironhand said coldly. Though I suggest you remain available for questioning. Once Elena had slipped past the guards, Sylvar allowed his shoulders to relax slightly. At least she would be safe. Shall we proceed to this farce of a trial, then? Your wit does you no credit, Highness. Ironhand gestured to his men. Secure him. As the guards approached, Sylvar's hand drifted to his sword hilt. For a moment, the air grew thick with tension. Then, deliberately, he moved his hand away. That won't be necessary. I'll come peacefully. The great hall of justice stretched the length of 3 jousting lists, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadow despite the morning sun streaming through towering stained-glass windows. Members of the Royal Council sat in tiered seats of polished mahogany, their faces masks of stern disapproval. The gallery above was packed with nobles and wealthy merchants, all craning their necks for a better view of the spectacle below. Sylvar stood alone in the center of the hall, his silver-gilt hair catching the colored light from the windows. They had allowed him to keep his sword, a small courtesy that spoke volumes about their confidence in the outcome of this trial. Lord High Justice Aldrich Thornhaven, his black robes trimmed with gold, unrolled a scroll with deliberate slowness. Prince Sylvar Rosser, you stand accused of high treason against the crown and people of Elver. How do you answer these charges? They are false, Sylvar replied, his clear voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Fabricated by those who fear change more than they love peace. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Lord Blackthorn leaned forward in his seat. Bold words from one whose treachery is recorded in his own hand. Perhaps His Highness would care to explain these? He held up several letters, their broken seals clearly visible. Those are not my letters, Sylvar said firmly. Though I commend your forger, the hand is remarkably similar to mine. You deny authoring this correspondence? Lady Frost's voice could have frozen flame. Perhaps the testimony of your former secretary will refresh your memory. A slight man in plain brown robes was led forward. Sylvar recognized him as Thomas Quill, who had indeed served as his secretary until being dismissed for accepting bribes 2 months prior. Quill kept his eyes downcast as he spoke. I witnessed His Highness writing these letters. He sent them by secret courier to the barbarian camps. He spoke of revolution, of destroying the old order. And you kept this knowledge to yourself until now? Sylvar asked mildly. Strange, considering you were dismissed from my service nearly 2 months ago. For corruption, as I recall. Color flooded Quill's cheeks. That is. Enough. Lord High Justice Thornhaven's voice cut through the mounting tension. We have heard sufficient testimony. The evidence is clear. Prince Sylvar Rosser, you have betrayed the sacred trust of your position and endangered the realm with your treasonous acts. Sylvar's laugh was sharp and bitter. Sacred trust? You speak of trust while conducting this mockery of justice? He turned in a slow circle, addressing the entire hall. Look well, all of you. See how easily truth can be buried, how readily justice can be perverted by those who... Silence. Thornhaven thundered. You will hear the council's judgment. The sentence, when it came, surprised no one, except, perhaps, in its relative mercy. Exile to the eastern wastes, rather than execution. As the pronouncement echoed through the hall, Sylvar caught sight of Elena in the gallery, her face wet with tears. He gave her the slightest of nods. They both knew this was, in its way, a victory. He would live, and where there was life, there was hope. Commander Ironhand stepped forward. The prisoner will be escorted to the eastern border immediately. He may take his sword and whatever provisions can be carried on one horse. Let it be known that any who offer him aid after sunrise tomorrow will be considered traitors themselves. As the guards led him from the hall, Sylvar caught fragments of conversation from the gallery. A shame, such a promising young prince. Always knew his radical ideas would lead to this. The eastern wastes? Might as well execute him cleanly. Like and subscribe for part 2.